The very first thing I noticed when this trailer opened is that the Wasteland does not look the same anymore. And I think that's completely intentional. The creative team behind Fallout is sending a message right from the first frame. And that message is simple. Everything has changed. The balance that barely existed in Season 2 is completely gone now. And what we are looking at is a world that has tipped over the edge into something far more dangerous, far more chaotic, and honestly far more exciting than anything we have seen before in this show. Think back to where we left things at the end of Season 2. The Ghoul was heading to Colorado after finding that postcard inside Barbara's empty capsule. Lucy had just made one of the hardest decisions of her life with her father. Maximus had proven himself as a true knight in the most incredible way possible. Steph had already started setting Phase 2 into motion, and Mr. House had been awakened. Every single one of those storylines was a lit match being dropped into a room full of gasoline. And now, in this trailer, we are watching that room explode. What the trailer does so brilliantly is that it doesn't give you one story. It gives you 5, 6, maybe even 7 stories all colliding at once, and somehow it makes every single one of them feel urgent and important. You're not watching one character's journey anymore. You're watching the entire wasteland crack open. The scale of Season 3 is clearly something the show has been building toward since the very first episode, and seeing it finally come together in these few minutes of footage is genuinely breathtaking. I kept rewinding specific moments just to make sure I was actually seeing what I thought I was seeing. Let's start with the wasteland itself, because the environments in this trailer are doing a lot of heavy lifting. Colorado is front and center, and I have to say, the creative team was not lying when they hinted that Colorado would feel completely different from the Mojave and from Vegas. There is something eerie and unsettling about the way Colorado looks in these shots. It feels colder, darker, more isolated. The ruins look older somehow, more forgotten. And that perfectly matches what we should be expecting from the Ghoul's storyline this season. This is not a place where people are rebuilding and trying to create factions and alliances. Colorado feels like a place where things went wrong in a very different way, and the trailer is using the environment itself to tell us that before a single line of dialogue is even spoken. And speaking of dialogue, the lines we do hear in this trailer are carefully chosen. Nobody is giving long speeches. Nobody is explaining the plot to us. The lines are short, sharp, and loaded with meaning. There's a moment in the trailer where a voice, and I won't say whose just yet because I want to get into each character separately, says something along the lines of, "There being no going back now." And that single line sitting on top of the visuals we are seeing just hit differently. Because they're right, there is no going back. The world of Fallout Season 3 is not going to resolve neatly. It's not going to end with everyone finding peace and rebuilding. This is a war story now, and the trailer is making absolutely sure we understand that. Now let's talk about the factions, because this is where the trailer really starts to get overwhelming in the best possible way. We already knew going into Season 3 that there would be multiple sides in this war. We knew about the new California Republic, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave working quietly in the shadows, Mr. House securing Vegas, and Lerda Leggett taking over the Legion. But seeing all of these factions represented in the trailer, seeing their flags, their soldiers, their weapons, their attitudes, all of it crashing together, it makes the political complexity of this world feel more real than it ever has before. This isn't good versus evil. This is a multi-sided war where everyone believes they are the right one, and that is genuinely terrifying. The new California Republic in particular looks incredibly different in this trailer compared to how we saw them at the end of Season 2. When they rode in and saved Maximus from the Death Claws, they felt almost heroic, almost like the cavalry arriving at the perfect moment. But in this trailer, there are shots of NCR soldiers doing things that are not heroic at all. There are moments that suggest the NCR's methods are just as brutal as anyone else's when they feel threatened or when they are fighting for survival. And I think that's the most important storytelling choice the show is making this season. Nobody gets to be the clean good guy. Everyone has blood on their hands in the Wasteland. And Season 3 is going to force every character and every faction to show exactly what they are willing to do to survive and to win. The trailer is setting this up in a way that feels completely earned after 2 seasons of careful world building. and I am so here for it. The Brotherhood of Steel is also getting a very different kind of spotlight this season, and a lot of that is connected to Quintus and that terrifying end credit scene from the Season 2 finale, where he declared himself Quintus the Destroyer. In the trailer, we get glimpses of Brotherhood soldiers moving in formation, and there is a clear sense that this faction under Quintus is not the same Brotherhood we have seen operating in the background. This feels militant, aggressive, almost fanatical, in a way that even the Brotherhood's usual rigid ideology doesn't quite explain. Something has shifted inside the Brotherhood, and Quintus seems to have taken whatever discipline and structure existed before and turned it into something much darker and much more dangerous. Every time I see Brotherhood armor in this trailer, instead of feeling like they might be an ally to someone, I feel genuine dread, and I think that is exactly the reaction the showrunners want from us. This is the part of the trailer that hit me the hardest, because yes, the factions are exciting. Yes, the scale of the war is thrilling. But at the end of the day, the reason we care about any of this is because of the characters. Lucy, the Ghoul, Maximus, Norm, Steph, these are the people we have been following, worrying about, rooting for, and sometimes crying over. And what this trailer is showing us is that every single one of them has been changed by what happened in Season 2. Not slightly changed, not a little more experienced, and a little wiser. Fundamentally, deeply, maybe irreversibly changed. And honestly, watching that transformation play out in just a few minutes of trailer footage is both exciting and genuinely heartbreaking at the same time. Let's start with Lucy, because her arc in this trailer is the one that stopped me completely in my tracks. When we first met Lucy back in Season 1, she was this incredibly optimistic, almost naively hopeful vault dweller who genuinely believed that the world outside could be better if people just tried hard enough. That version of Lucy was charming and lovable and a little bit frustrating in the best way possible. Then, Season 2 happened. She lost her father, not just physically, but spiritually. She watched Hank choose mind control technology over his own daughter. She made the decision to implant that chip herself, and by the end of the finale, she was already showing signs of something changing inside her. Most obviously, with that gangrene on her finger that so many of us have been obsessing over since the finale aired. In this trailer, Lucy does not look like the girl who crawled out of Vault 33 with wide eyes and good intentions. She looks like someone who has seen too much, lost too much, and is now operating from a completely different place emotionally. There are shots of her in the trailer where her expression is unreadable in a way it never used to be. She used to wear every single feeling on her face. That openness was part of what made her so compelling to watch. But now there is something guarded there, something closed off, and I think that change in Lucy is going to be one of the most powerful storylines of the entire season. And then there is the question that everyone watching this trailer is going to be asking about Lucy, which is the gangrene situation, and what it means for her future. Because I have been thinking about this since the finale, and I still cannot land on a comfortable answer. The show is clearly not going to ignore it. It would be too significant a detail to introduce and then just quietly resolve off-screen. In the trailer, there are moments where the camera lingers on Lucy's hand in a way that feels deliberate, and I genuinely cannot tell if what I am seeing is her condition getting worse, or if she has somehow found a way to manage it. What I do know is that the show is going to use whatever is happening to Lucy physically as a mirror for what is happening to her internally. The Wasteland changes people. We have always known that, but it usually changes them slowly, over years of exposure and survival. Lucy is changing faster than anyone expected, and I think the show is asking a very uncomfortable question this season. How much of who you were can you lose before you become something completely different? I really hope the answer for Lucy is not as dark as the trailer seems to be hinting. Now let's talk about the Ghoul. And I have to be honest, this is the part of the trailer that made me feel the most emotionally complicated. Because the Ghoul going to Colorado should be a hopeful storyline on paper, he found that postcard. He has reason to believe Barbara and Janie are alive. After everything he has been through, after centuries of loss and survival and becoming something he never wanted to become, he finally has a direction and a reason to keep moving forward. But the trailer is not presenting his Colorado journey as hopeful at all. The shots of the Ghoul in Colorado are dark and isolated, and genuinely frightening in a way that even his scenes in the Mojave never quite were. Colorado in this show is being presented as a place that breaks people, and watching the ghoul move through it alone, without Lucy, without anyone, carrying nothing but that postcard and whatever hope is left inside him. I felt genuinely worried for him in a way I didn't expect from a trailer. There is a specific moment in the trailer involving the ghoul that I have rewound probably 8 or 9 times now, and I still cannot fully make sense of it. Without giving too much away in terms of interpretation, there is a scene where the ghoul appears to be facing something, or someone, and his body language is completely different from anything we have seen from him before. The ghoul has always carried himself with this terrifying confidence, this cold and precise energy that made him feel almost untouchable. But in this particular moment, he doesn't look untouchable. He looks like someone confronting something that genuinely scares him. And for the ghoul, a character who has survived the apocalypse and centuries of the wasteland and loss and transformation, something that scares him is something that should absolutely terrify us. I have so many theories about what or who he could be facing in that moment, and I will tell you my honest guess. I think there is a real possibility that whatever the Enclave has been planning, it has reached Colorado before the ghoul did. And if the Enclave is already there, waiting, then the ghoul walking into Colorado alone might be walking directly into the most dangerous situation he has ever faced. Maximus in this trailer is everything I wanted. And more. After that incredible moment in the Season 2 finale, where he stood against the Deathclaws with nothing but a shield and a pipe, proving that being a true knight was never about the armor, I was already convinced that Maximus was going to have an enormous Season 3, and this trailer is confirming exactly that. We see Maximus in situations that are clearly much larger in scale than anything he handled before. He is not a side character finding his place anymore. He is right in the middle of the war, and the NCR seems to be treating him as someone significant, which makes complete sense given what he proved at the end of Season 2. But what I love most about how Maximus is being presented in this trailer is that even in the middle of all this war and chaos and scale, he still feels like Maximus. He still has that quality of being slightly overwhelmed by the world around him, while also being completely committed to doing the right thing, regardless of the cost. That combination is what makes him so magnetic to watch. And seeing it survive, even as everything around him gets bigger and more dangerous, tells me the writers understand exactly what makes this character work. The relationship between Maximus and Lucy is also clearly going to be a central thread this season, and the trailer is being very careful about how much it shows us of the two of them together. We get glimpses, we get moments, but we never get a full, clear picture of where they stand with each other, which I think is completely intentional. Because at the end of Season 2, their reunion was emotional and real, but also happening in the middle of absolute chaos. They didn't get to sit down and talk about everything. They didn't get to process any of it. And Season 3 is clearly going to force them to do exactly that, while simultaneously throwing the entire wasteland at them. I think their relationship this season is going to be the emotional core that grounds everything else, even when the war storylines are at their most overwhelming and chaotic. And watching this trailer, seeing those brief glimpses of them together, I already feel that emotional weight, building in a way that tells me the show knows exactly how much we care about these two people, and what they mean to each other. I have to be completely honest with you. Out of everything in this trailer, out of all the war footage, and the faction clashes, and the character moments, and the Colorado mystery, the storyline that is genuinely keeping me up at night is what is happening inside the vaults. Because when Steph sent that message to Vault Tech at the end of Season 2 to initiate Phase 2, most of us understood on an intellectual level that things were about to get very dark inside the vault system. But I don't think any of us truly understood just how dark until this trailer arrived and showed us what Phase 2 actually looks like in practice. And I have to tell you, it is worse than I imagined. It is so much worse than I imagined. Let's talk about Steph first, because this character has gone through one of the most fascinating transformations in the entire show, and I feel like she doesn't always get the credit she deserves for how layered and complicated she is. When Steph was first introduced, there was always something slightly off about her, something calculated behind the warmth. And as Season 2 unfolded and we started to understand more about her history, about her relationship with Hank, about the possibility that she could be Lucy's mother, that calculated quality started to make a very specific kind of sense. Steph is not a villain in the traditional sense. she is not cruel for the sake of being cruel. She genuinely believes in what she is doing. She genuinely believes that control is the only way to ensure survival, that left to their own devices, people will destroy themselves and everything around them, and that someone has to make the hard decisions that nobody else is willing to make. That belief system is internally consistent, and in a strange way even understandable, given the world she exists in. But what this trailer is showing us is what happens when that belief system is given unlimited power and external support from Vault Tech. And the answer is something that looks a lot like a dictatorship and feels a lot like a nightmare. In the trailer, there are sequences set inside the vault that have a completely different visual and emotional texture compared to everything happening in the Wasteland outside. The Wasteland is chaotic and open and dangerous in ways you can see coming. But the vault scenes feel suffocating. They feel controlled and airless in a way that is somehow more frightening than the death claws and the faction wars and everything else happening above ground. Because in the Wasteland, danger is visible. You can see the threat coming, and you can make a choice about how to respond to it. Inside the vault, under Steph's Phase 2, the danger is invisible. It is woven into the systems and the rules and the social structures of the vault itself. People are being controlled without always knowing they are being controlled, and that is a specific kind of horror that the show is clearly leaning into very deliberately this season. Steph herself, in the trailer, looks completely transformed compared to how we saw her in Season 2. There was always a performance quality to Steph, a sense that she was managing how she was perceived and carefully controlling the image she projected to the people around her. In Season 2, that performance still had warmth in it. There were moments where you could almost convince yourself that the warmth was real, that underneath the calculation, there was an actual human being who cared about the people in her vault. In this trailer, that warmth is almost completely gone. What we see instead is someone who has fully stepped into the role she was always moving toward. She is not performing leadership anymore. She has become something else entirely, and the people around her in the vault can clearly feel the difference, even if they cannot always name it or articulate what has changed. There is a shot in the trailer of Steph addressing what looks like a gathered group of vault inhabitants, and the expressions on the faces of the people listening to her are not the expressions of people who trust their leader. They are the expressions of people who are afraid and trying very hard not to show it. And Steph either doesn't notice or doesn't care. And honestly, I'm not sure which of those possibilities is more